I'm 18 years old. I'm sitting in my parents' house. I remember seeing the commissioner of baseball, Bud Selig, walk across the stage. With the 9th overall pick in the 2009 MLB Draft, the Detroit Tigers select me. I will never forget running across the room, giving my dad the biggest hug, and just simply saying, "We did it." But here's what nobody tells you about that moment. That moment is just step one, because the minute that call comes in, you're now entering the biggest financial negotiation of your entire life. The clock's running, and you're doing it against people that have done it hundreds of times before. You see, I had really no idea what to expect, and that's the case for most families going through the MLB Draft today. So while my phone was blowing up, there was hugs happening, there were tears, there was awe, there was excitement, there was joy, there was every emotion in between. Nobody was thinking about contracts. Nobody was thinking about leverage or taxes or what the minor leagues would look like or what all this even entailed. And that's exactly the problem. You see, within a few weeks, I was in that negotiation for millions of dollars as an 18-year-old when I didn't have all the information, but I knew this would affect me for decades to come. Now, back then, I had a little bit of time to make this decision, but in today's MLB Draft environment, players and families are faced with two scenarios. On one side, you're making a decision with maybe 30 seconds on the clock, and the team's deciding whether they're going to draft you and pay you millions of dollars. On the flip side, you're getting drafted with no deal in place, and you're scrambling for the next few weeks trying to put something together with the reality that this is going to affect you for the rest of your life. So while the pressure's the same, the stakes are the same, the clock, it's ticking faster than ever. Now, sure, you have an agent who's done this hundreds of times before, who's walking alongside you in the negotiation process. But it's important to remember that the agent's just negotiating the contract. And just negotiating the contract is only one step in this entire process. Because getting drafted, becoming a pro, especially as an 18 to 21-year-old, that entails far more than just what you signed for. That decision I made after that call came in would affect me for years to come. But frankly, it took me years to even realize what was at stake. Some of those decisions I made, I would do all over again. And some of those decisions I made, I would do differently. This video is a conversation that I wish I could have had with myself before that call ever came in. So where does it actually start? And the reality is it's not where most people think. It's not when you sign the contract. No, it's actually when your name gets called in the first place. Because where you actually get drafted will set the stage for every aspect of the negotiation to follow. Take me, for example. I was the 9th overall pick in the draft, yet 24 hours before the signing deadline, the Detroit Tigers had offered me almost $4 million, and I was set to say no. I was set to say no to millions of dollars in the dream that I always had, with the intention of going to school instead. Yet, I'll never forget waking up the next morning, and there was a new offer on the table, $5.5 million, with escalators up to $7 million. I can remember feeling equal parts gratitude, excitement, and almost awe, but also this fear of the unknown. Okay, I got all this money, but what was I walking into? You see, the one thing that I didn't understand about this process, even outside of the numbers, was that where you get drafted and what your opportunity ultimately looks like is actually a combination of a couple different things. Sure, it's your draft position. Sure, it's what you sign for in the draft, but it's also the team that you end up getting selected by. It's what their developmental process looks like. Because we have to remember that the draft is just the starting point. It's not the ending point. The draft is not what we dreamed of. We dreamed of playing in the big leagues one day. And to get to the big leagues, to become the player that you want to become, it's a combination of where you get drafted, what you sign for, and what that opportunity set with that team actually looks like. So while your draft position sets your ceiling, it's up to you to determine what you build underneath that. So you've got your number, you've signed with your team, and you think that the negotiation of this process is over. But what if I told you it's actually just starting? It's easy to sit there and just look at the number that you signed for. But a couple things you have to understand. Every signing bonus, it's not treated the same. Because the biggest bill that you will ever have as a professional athlete is going to be your tax bill. And you're going to get hit with it right off the bat. I can still remember getting that first check, $1.2 million was my first bonus installment, and feeling this pit in my stomach when I saw my pay stub and I saw $1.2 million on the top, and I saw I was only getting roughly $600,000 of that. Because I had to remember 5% was going to my agent, roughly 40% of the time was going to federal taxes, and then you had state taxes on top of that. So if you're a draftee out there, you have to remember that ultimately you're going to get somewhere between 30 and 50% of your signing bonus, depending on how much you signed for. I remember thinking, so this is how it actually works. And that's what most families miss, that there's negotiation in this entire process. It's not just that dollar amount. It also depends on how your bonus is structured. Most signing bonuses are split between 2 years, 50% in year 1, 50% in year 2. But the thing that families miss is, depending on how much leverage you have in the situation, you could push more money to year 1 and push more money to year 2. Now you might be asking, why does that actually matter? Well, the biggest factor in taxes for athletes is what their state residency is. And if your signing bonus is structured the right way as a true signing bonus, you have a chance to potentially avoid state taxes altogether. But this has to be done while the clock is ticking. While you're negotiating the contract in the first place, you have to make sure that all these elements are already set up and in place. Then you add in things like retirement accounts. If you're a player getting drafted, you have the opportunity to contribute to the MLB 401k plan, which in year 1, if you're in the top tax bracket, could save you north of $8,000 in taxes. You see, I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there's a lot to think about, and it's not just the number that you sign for. And this is exactly what we help players walk through at Moment Private Wealth. We help top draft picks make sure that they're maximizing the signing bonus that they get. Because at the end of the day, you have one shot to do this right. If that sounds like you can schedule a call with our team and see if we're fit to help you. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to talk about something that I've never shared publicly, a decision I made that ended up costing me hundreds of thousands of dollars that I will never get back. But before we do that, I want to talk about a decision point that most families don't really think about in this process. The decision to sign versus going to school. Now, it sounds like maybe a simple one, but I assure you it's anything but. So I want to take you back to something I mentioned earlier in this video, that I was 24 hours away from honoring my commitment to the University of North Carolina, skipping the draft altogether and not signing with the Detroit Tigers as the 9th overall pick. I wasn't just saying that to craft a story or build some leverage. No, I had been through orientation. I had my classes picked out. I had my roommate picked out. I was ready to go. In fact, I had told myself so many times over and over and over again that the only thing promised me was my scholarship at the University of North Carolina, that my brain was set on going that direction. But then the other side of your brain starts to think, well, what if I get hurt? What if I don't perform as well as I thought I was going to? What if I never get offered this opportunity set again? The high draft position, the millions of dollars, the great organization. What happens if I regret this decision? You see, today, when I sit across the table from my family and they're making that decision that I made 15 plus years ago, the emotion that I overwhelmingly see is fear. And not fear in the way that you probably think of it, but a specific kind of fear. The fear of regret. The regret of, if I sign and I don't take this college opportunity, I'll never get the normal college experience. I'll never get to play in front of 10,000 crazy college baseball fans. I'll never get to play at the College World Series. I'll never get to play in the SEC. But if I go to school and I turn down millions, will I regret that opportunity set that I had? Will that opportunity set ever present itself again? What if I get hurt? What if my draft position isn't the same? What if my stock drops? And you're making that decision with incomplete information. You're making that decision as an 18-year-old. You're making that decision when the emotions and the stakes are higher than ever. Oh, and don't forget, the clock is ticking. I went through that exact moment. 24 hours left on the clock. The decision to become a Tar Heel or to become a Detroit Tiger. And here's what I wish I would have understood in that situation that I share with families today. College baseball and professional baseball are two plan A options. But college baseball is vastly different than professional baseball. Both of them now have a financial component with NIL and revenue sharing on the college side. But college baseball is win now. And what that means as a player is when you get there, it is not going to be about your development. It's going to be about, can you perform on day one and help that team win games? Versus pro baseball is going to be all about development. Whether you are going in and you are performing on day one or not, you are going to get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to continue to build your skill set. So that's a big decision point that families have to understand. Although college baseball and pro baseball, there's a financial component and you're playing baseball in both of them, they couldn't be further from each other. Now you add in stats like this, that you have almost a 2 times higher likelihood of getting to the big leagues as a drafted player coming out of college than you do coming out of high school. And it starts to make you rethink, well, even if I get millions of dollars out of high school, is my best opportunity set for the longest career in the big leagues, which is ultimately the goal. Remember, the goal is not just to get drafted, to go to college. So inevitably, when a family asks me, well, what would you do? The question that I pose back to them is one that is pretty simple, but also very complex. Which one of these decisions would you regret less? Because the truth is, nobody can play Monday morning quarterback. Nobody knows what the future beholds. But the reality is you have to make a decision, and you have to make a decision that you are willing to live with for the decades to come. So what I want every draft family to understand, particularly the ones that we help work with and walk alongside in this process, is we want to make an unemotional decision. I want to give you all the information. So you're no longer making this decision with incomplete information. You have all of it in front of you. And then only then can you make a decision that's in your best interest, that's as unemotional as we possibly can be. Because here's what nobody tells you about what's on the other side of that decision. We've all seen it. We've all dreamed about it. Playing in front of 50,000 people, the bright lights, the big stadium, the great meals after the game, the incredible travel in between cities. But I want to show you what it looks like. An A-ball with 150 people in the stands. The lights are barely flickering, and you're wondering, what am I doing here? Here's what people outside of baseball fail to understand. That your career and your life can change just like that. In fact, all it takes is one call into the manager's office, and you go from playing in front of 50,000 people, the bright lights on a weekend on ESPN, to playing in front of 150 people in the minor leagues on a Tuesday night. You see, the minor leagues and the major leagues are both pro ball, but they couldn't be further from each other. On one side, you're making $20,000 to $35,000 a year. On the other side, you're making a league minimum of $780,000 a year. On one side, you're riding buses between cities. On the other side, you're flying chartered planes everywhere. On one side, nobody knows what's actually happening unless you're a huge fan. On the other side, you're on ESPN every other day. Now you add in the psychological component. That all of a sudden you've been earning millions of dollars from the time that you were 18 years old, but you have no experience with this. So on one side, you have the greatest superpower. You have time on your side. And on the other side, you have the biggest weakness you could possibly have. You have no experience. Now, if you're a fan out there, consider your situation. Chances are, as you've been progressing in your career, you've been incrementally making more and more money. So if you made a financial mistake, it was like stubbing your toe. For an athlete, if we make a financial mistake, it's like breaking our leg. There's no do-overs in this. So often, by the time that you realize you might not be doing it the right way, your career might be on the back half. In fact, your career could be over. That's not a character flaw. That's just the design of the system. And it's what nobody warned you about when that phone rings in the first place. I've been on that bus. I've been in that manager's office when he tells me I'm going down. I've made the financial mistakes that I'm talking about in this video. So let me tell you exactly what I would do differently, because that's what I promised you at the beginning of this video. People ask me all the time, probably the most common question I get, Jacob, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? And resoundingly, I would tell them that I would sign again. And the reason's pretty simple. I got life-changing money. And that was my goal. If I could get life-changing money out of high school, I would bypass college and sign that professional contract. But here's the thing that I would do differently. I would get all the information from people that had been down this path before. You see, I waited to hire some of the people around me. I waited till after the draft. And I hired people that, although they were great people, they had my best interest, they were trying to do good work for me, they weren't specialists. In fact, consider this analogy. If you broke your arm, would you go to your kid's pediatrician? No, absolutely not. You go to an orthopedic surgeon, who then would take a look at the exact bone that you broke and most likely refer you to a specialist that only works on that part of the arm. When it comes to an athlete and when it comes to the advice that you're getting, it should be just as specialized, because you have to remember there's nobody that you can call. Your neighbor didn't go through the same process. You're in the 0.0001% of people. And chances are you might be the only person in your family that's ever walked through this. You have one chance to do it and the clock is ticking. So for me, the big mistake that I made, I didn't establish state residency fast enough. And it wasn't because I didn't want to make good financial decisions. It was because I didn't have all the information in front of me. And it ended up costing me a couple $100,000 in taxes. A couple $100,000 in taxes that if I would have had the right people around me, I wouldn't have had to pay. Now, it wasn't about me being careless or being reckless. I just simply didn't know what I didn't know. I was an 18-year-old. My family was going through this for the very first and only time. Because the thing that you have to understand is by the time that you agree to that contract, the clock really starts ticking. Typically 24 hours later, the MLB PAs approve that contract, and the next day, you're going to be on a flight to the spring training facility. And your goal then is to make a good first impression. You're no longer thinking about all the different financial components that are coming your way. So when I say the clock is ticking, it's not just about the clock ticking when you actually get the signing bonus negotiated. No, the clock is actually ticking on when you're going to receive the money. Because some of the elements I talked about here, some of the things that might save a player hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, the clock is ticking on that. And typically you might get that first bonus installment within 30 days. Think about a Navy SEAL mission. By the time that they hit the beach, by the time they have boots on the ground, they've mapped out every different scenario. They've mapped out every different strategy or thing that could come to them. And if you're a family out there that's navigating the MLB draft process, you should be thinking about it much the same way. You don't want to hit that beach and then realize, oh man, I didn't think of that contingency plan. So that's what I would do differently. It's not the decision to sign, it's the preparation prior to it. And look, I know that's a lot to take in. But here's the one thing that I want to leave you with. I want to take you back to the moment that I talked about at the beginning of this video, where I'm running across the room, I'm giving my dad a big hug and simply saying, we did it. Nothing can ever take away from that moment. But here's the thing I realized. That moment, it was just a starting line. it wasn't the ending point. I think it's very hard as an 18 or 21-year-old to realize what's really at stake in this process. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help players make sure that they make the most of the one opportunity set that they have, that they do it right the very first time. I played 11 years of professional baseball, experienced about every high and every low that you could along the way. Yet, there were things I did where I still left money on the table. And it wasn't because I wanted to, it's because I didn't have the right team of experts around me. But here's the thing, that doesn't have to be you. If you're a player or a family walking through this process, this is exactly who we help at Moment. And not generic financial advice. Advice for somebody walking through this specific situation. People in the 0.00001%. Because before that phone ever rings, you want to be prepared. As always, my goal is to help you get smarter with your money. Until next time, my friends.